Hello, hello, everybody, and welcome to Celebrate with L.A. Williams. My name is L.A. Williams, and I am in deep gratitude and respect. Today, we are celebrating the one and only Miss Annalisa Dias. Annalisa, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. It's like, what are we in year three of the pandemic
Year three.
and living life,
Year
trying to
three.
survive?
And exactly, absolutely. Living life, trying to survive. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Annalisa, thank you for being here. Before I get into a deeper introduction of you, I want to talk a few seconds about what Celebrate is and what it means to me, if that's all right.
of course.
So this series is a manifestation of a moment I had as a very young theater student at Alabama State University. And I had gone over to the theater building, first semester of school, that kind of thing, and saw a play they were doing called Phaedra by Jean Racine. And it was directed by Dr. Tommy Stewart. And Annalisa, it was that experience for me where I was like, oh my God, I want to make theater for the rest of my life. You know, it was that kind of whole thing. Um,
It was Phaedra?
it was Phaedra.
Wow.
It was language and it was drama and it was like melodrama. People were dying on stage and I was like, what is this? It was an
And the
incredible
cow,
experience.
right? Isn't that the one with the cow?
I don't remember.
Or the bull
Maybe
or something?
something. Maybe. I ain't gonna tell you how many years ago this was, but absolutely. And I remember being swept over by that experience, but I also remember feeling the need, the desire, the overwhelming desire to go and find everybody involved in that production and tell them thank you. Thank you for their work. Thank you for inspiring me. Thank you for like changing my life, truly, because that's what that experience was. And when I think about it, that was the beginning of what is now Celebrate. Cut to some years later, I'm living in New York City and I have this divine inspiration to like begin this interview platform where I sit down with some of those artists and talk to them about their work and listen to them talk about some of the transformative moments in their journey. And here we are 10 years later, as you already mentioned, we're pulling through this pandemic. We are surviving. We are like living and trying to keep it going. And we're also trying to reopen theater and do all these wonderful things. And so I made a personal commitment last fall to get up and get out there and show up and, you know, attend shows and see work everywhere as much as I can to support the people who I consider to be on the front lines, the people who were continuing to work during this pandemic, you know, actors on stage, people behind the stage. And I'm so glad I did because I got to see so many shows in and out of town. I'm currently in New York. As you know, I've been spending a lot of time in Baltimore. And I'm so glad because one of the first shows I actually saw in person, was the wonderful production of Charlene Woodard's The Garden, directed by the incredible Patricia
Oh
McGregor.
yeah. Oh yeah. So good.
I mean, it was so good. I was so happy to be back in the theater. That experience alone was like kind of like starting over for me, you know, because it had been 2 3 years, 2 years or however long it had been. It's all a wash now. You know, since I'd seen some good theater or theater at all in a theater. So that experience was really pivotal. But what I also remember about seeing that wonderful production was shortly after I had lunch with Kiara Klein and we were talking and we were somewhere in Baltimore at some really cute little place. And then out of nowhere comes you, Miss Annalisa Diaz, and you joined us and we had a conversation. And I remember you saying, oh my God, you should come to this event we're having tonight. It's at the Union Brewery Factory. Of course, I'm butchering the
Yeah,
name.
yeah. Union Craft. Uh-huh.
Yeah, Union Craft, and someone by the name of Dr. Jarrell Brown is going to be there, and Dr. Nkuru Nawalezi's going to be there, and it's going to be this whole thing's going to be a DJ Pride event, and they're going to be discussing some of the things in the play, which were around healing and trauma, and like what seeds we plant and what we're tending to, and Annalisa, not only did I need to see that play in that space at that time, but I needed to like meet you and be invited to that event because Annalisa, I don't know if you remember my presence in that space that day, but I was overwhelmed with
Oh,
joy
trust
and
that I
gratitude.
remember.
And I have you to thank for that because you somehow saw me and heard me at that lunch with Kiara, and you said, you should come to this thing. And I remember thinking, I need to drive back to New York, but I don't know, maybe I should just trust this. And so I went, and I'm so glad I did. Darrell and I are friends now. We talk often. And it made me think about the importance of not just work on stage, but the community organizing work that happens off stage. Yeah. Okay. And you are the director of artistic programs and artistic partnerships and innovation at the Baltimore Center Stage. I think I got that right. But you're also a
I'm like
playwright.
moved by it. I'm like a little bit Crying? Why?
You,
I don't know. What is this happening? Emotions.
Annalisa, I'm so. I mean, I'm just. First of all, be moved. I mean, because I feel all of those things in my body,
Yeah.
and it's
Wow.
absolutely what I think of when I think of you. When I think of
Oh,
my experience in Baltimore, you have no idea. And today, I wanted to let you know what that invitation meant to me, and how Darrell and I and that conversation that night
love
really
him. Love
shifted.
him.
So, I mean, gosh, me too. It shifted something in me. It reminded me of that moment I had as a very young theater student. And so I wanted to tell you that in this particular space. I wanted to say thank you for that introduction, and also thank you for like inviting me, but also like thank you for the work you do in Baltimore and everywhere. You are a wonderful playwright, an artist, a theater maker, community organizer, innovator. Annalisa, and you, I love you and I see you, and I'm just so happy that our paths have crossed. And that is today why I wanted to celebrate you.
Oh wait, what the hell? You're like, come do this podcast with me, and I was like unprepared for like keeping. I don't. I never take compliments well. Like it's just a thing that
Oh
I
my,
like need to work through with a therapist.
yeah. Oh my God.
Oh wow, wow, this is so lovely. Thank you for saying all of that. That
Oh
really
my
means a lot.
God.
That really
Thank
means a
you.
lot.
Thank you. Thank you for receiving it. And I mean it from the bottom of my heart. You're very welcome. So the way I love that you're like, what is happening? I love it so much. So the way I like to start these celebrate conversations off, Annalisa, is by simply celebrating the day you were born. And that idea is meant to have you take us back to wherever you want us to go, to however far back you want us to go, and talk to us either about your birth story, your earliest memory, your face right now, Annalisa, your face, your earliest memory, just young life, childhood, growing up as young Annalisa.
Oh wow. Okay, okay. Well, I was born in Dayton, Ohio.
I'm
I
from
know.
Cleveland.
Oh, what?
I'm from Cleveland. I was born in Cleveland. Yep.
Oh, fascinating. Well, so I was born in Dayton, Ohio, but my family only lived there for like less than a year, and
Mm-hmm.
then my parents moved back to Pittsburgh, which is where my mom's family is from.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up in Pittsburgh, in like running
Mm-hmm.
around the rivers and the hills. Um, and yeah, I guess I would say like my formative memories are from Pittsburgh more so than Ohio because I was so little in Ohio, like I don't really remember any of that.
At
There's
all,
like
yeah.
photos and photo albums, and I'm like, who are these people? Who is it? Like,
Is that even me? Exactly.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That's
Um,
amazing.
hmm Yeah. What can I share? Like, I don't know. What do I pick? What do I share?
Well, I guess talk a little bit more, if you might, about growing up in Pittsburgh and like the sort of structure of your family inside the house. Are you the only child? Do you have
Oh, sure,
siblings? And
sure, sure.
like, and just like, you know, anything you want to share about your sort of young life in Pittsburgh.
Okay, also, I just need you to know that there's this cat that's on my lap and she's like squirming around and doing things and
I
being
love
goofy.
it. I
And
love
here we
it.
are in pandemic life.
Yes, she is like, I'm full on a part of this interview.
Yes. Okay, Pittsburgh. I am not an only child. I have a younger sister who is about 4 years younger than me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm like very grateful now as adults that we've become a lot closer because when we were I don't know what it is about the 4 year age gap, but I think it's
Mm-hmm.
like just far enough apart that it's
Mm-hmm.
like I don't understand who this person is and what they
Uh-huh,
need and
uh-huh.
because like I was in high school when she was in middle school or I was in middle school when
Right.
she was still in elementary school, so it's just big
Right.
enough an
Yeah.
age gap that it's like we're kind of at odds. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Or that distance, right?
Yeah,
It's just a
yeah.
nice amount of
Because I
distance.
have some friends who have closer in age siblings that they were very close throughout
Hmm.
their childhood, or
Hmm.
if it's like actually a much bigger distance, then there's
Hmm.
almost a like the older sibling helps to
Hmm.
take care of the younger sibling, but we were just
Hmm.
far enough that we were just like
Hmm.
fighting all the
Hmm.
time.
Hmm.
um,
Hmm. Wow.
but like that all has shifted, I would say, in adulthood in a really
Hmm.
lovely way, and I'm very grateful that that relationship has
That's amazing.
yeah taken a different shape.
I love that.
um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Did you grow up in the house with your mom and dad, or one parent,
Yeah,
or?
yeah, mom and dad. My dad is from Goa, which is a part of India that the Portuguese colonized, which is
Mhm,
why my last name is Portuguese.
mhm,
Um, and so his family we like very rarely saw
mhm,
because a lot of them were either still in India or some of his siblings, one of them um, for a long time was living in the Middle East in Dubai. And
mhm,
then his other sibling married this guy. So these are my aunt and uncles.
mhm,
She married this guy who is a Brazilian consul. So
mhm,
they would like move around every four
mhm,
years to different countries
mhm,
all over the world. They're currently
mhm,
living in Brazil. So it
mhm,
was just a sort of like international family that I had that
mhm,
I like knew that they existed and we saw them every some amount of years, but it was not very frequent.
mhm,
So the family that I grew up around was my mom's family, and my mom
mhm,
is white and from
mhm,
Pittsburgh, and like
mhm,
I grew up going to these like family reunion gathering things over the
mhm,
like 4th of July and the holiday, like every holiday it was like a big Newham family. This is my mom's family, is a Newham family.
mhm,
It was like
mhm,
that gathering, and it was like
mhm,
all of these white people. And like,
mhm,
okay, I don't know why I'm like, this is the road I'm going to go down to share right now, but like
mhm,
I grew up believing that I was white.
mhm,
I kid you not. Like until I was, I think I didn't know that I wasn't white until I was like in middle school, like 12 or
mhm,
13 years
mhm,
old.
mhm,
Um, because I went to school in a predominantly white school district and
mhm.
most of my friends were white.
Right.
And there was like this time when the liberal, very well-meaning white people who were in the school leadership, the
Mhm.
like principal of the middle school gets on the PA system at the end of the day one day and is like, "Well, the following students please report to whatever the room was." They like list this, they like name all these students, and I hear my name called, and I'm like, "What award did I win this time?" Because I was an asshole. Uh, so I like marched my little self down to this room, and I'm like, "Oh, what thing am I gonna?"
What am I?
And I
What am
like
I here to
open
receive?
yeah, I like opened the door and I look around and I was like, what? And it was like
Mm.
all the black and brown kids. Yeah, for real. And they were like gonna offer us leadership classes because like historically students from our backgrounds were like not leaders or something like that. Like it's well intent. I see how they arrived at
Totally.
like
Yes.
this
Oh,
is the
yes.
way to like fix
To like
systemic
to fix
whatever.
the, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I got so angry.
Mm,
I got
mm-hmm.
so angry at this,
Mm,
and I like the next day marched down to the principal's office and I was like, how dare you? And like, I'm
mm,
running student council and like give
mhm.
these leadership classes to someone who needs it.
Uh-huh. 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 Uh-huh.
And it ended up they like canceled the whole thing.
What? I love that actually. I love
Yeah.
that story, Annalisa. I love that. I love it. I love that you're like, first of all, excuse me, my
Yeah.
very existence is leadership, number one.
Yeah.
Number
Yeah.
two, I am totally busy. I thought I was coming to pick up another award for my leadership. And
Such
I
a
also
joke.
love that they I love that they like shut it all down. And yes, I hear you. I think that there was, in putting myself in their shoes, probably some kind of well-intentioned, like, oh, but
Totally.
yeah, absolutely. So that's very interesting. So this was around 12 or 13, and you say this was around the time where you realized, would you say that experience was what made you go, oh, I'm not white? Like
Yeah,
I'm different from.
it was like an experience of no matter what I saw in the mirror, which was
Mm,
just like me,
right.
um, like I saw it was like a flip switch where I was like, oh, other
Mm,
people when they look at me, I don't know what they see.
I don't know what they see.
And like it could be any number of things and it could have any
Mm-hmm,
number of like negative
mm,
associations for
mm-hmm,
whatever bullshit
mm-hmm,
reasons. And
mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, I think I need to like grapple with what that I mean, I did not cognitively as a 12-year-old think about it in these terms, but
Yeah, yeah.
there was something about it that I was
Mm-hmm,
like, oh, this is disorienting, and
mm,
it was like I have to deal with this in some way.
mm, mm, mm. I love
And
that.
I would say too that like my like racial formation and whatever is like I don't know, it's interesting because I have a white mom and a brown dad.
Mm-hmm,
My dad grew up in India,
mm-hmm,
and so I'm on that side I'm like a first generation
mm-hmm.
child of an immigrant, you know,
mhm, mhm,
and like my dad's journey to being a US citizen, you know, it's like more important to assimilate and this
mhm,
kind of
mhm,
stuff. And
mhm,
my mom is white.
mhm,
So I was never spoken to by my parents about
mhm,
like, these are the things. I was never
mhm,
coached on like,
mhm, mhm,
here's what you're going to encounter.
mhm,
And like
mhm,
to this day, my mom, I still have to I have these like conversations with my mom where I'm like, you don't
mhm,
understand that I experience racism.
mhm, mhm,
And she's like,
right.
but what? But what? Like, how?
Yeah, that's so
Yeah.
fascinating. I was going to ask you, once you had that moment as a young teenager, did you go home and like share it with your family or your mom or dad, or like, I mean,
I don't recall ever having like I don't recall having a conversation about it with my parents. No.
mhm, mhm, mhm. Absolutely. Oh God, that's so good, Annalisa. Thank you for sharing that. That, I mean, hmm. So then, so like, before we move forward a little bit, I'm curious to hear you talk a little bit more about Pittsburgh as a city. I'm always fascinated with like places, and like,
Yeah.
what do you remember from those sort of early formative years about growing up in Pittsburgh? You mentioned rivers and mountains, but like, what else, like, or whatever the word was you used, but like,
Yeah.
what,
Yeah.
talk to me a little bit more about the environment of Pittsburgh, that atmosphere.
Yeah. Pittsburgh is such a I mean, as all places are, it's like a
Mhm,
complicated,
mhm,
complex place
mhm,
with
mhm,
multi-layered histories,
mhm,
and
mhm,
depending on who you talk to, it means many
mhm,
different things to live
mhm,
there.
mhm,
Um,
mhm,
what do I say about Pittsburgh? So I grew up in like a suburb of Pittsburgh that was maybe like 10 to 15 minutes outside of the city. So it was
mhm.
never, it was like pretty easy for me to get downtown. And um my mom's part of my mom's family lived on like the other side of the city, so we would often be going in and like into the city to get to my cousin's house. And um I spent a lot of time as a kid doing basically every education program of the
Mm,
Pittsburgh Public Theater,
mm,
and that is right
mm,
downtown.
mm,
So I was like
mhm,
running around in downtown Pittsburgh
mm,
as a
mm,
young person, like
mm,
because I was there to like one of the programs they had at the time was called the Young Company, and I spent a
mm,
whole summer doing like draping in the costume shop
mm,
and like learning
mm,
about the what even is costuming and how do
mhm,
you build
mhm,
these like very fancy dresses and
mhm,
all sorts of stuff.
mm,
And yeah, I did like most of the education which sadly I think are now most of those don't exist anymore
mm,
because of
mhm,
funding cuts and all sorts of, you
mhm,
know, the regional theater model is dying.
mhm, mhm,
um,
mhm,
so a lot of those education programs don't exist anymore. But a lot of like when I think back on some of my most formative memories, it was running around downtown because
mm.
I was there to participate in these theater programs.
Wow.
Or I was like always volunteering for
Mm,
different things.
mhm,
So
mm,
through my middle school and high school, there were all of these sort of like volunteer programs where we were like planting trees in the West
mm,
End and
mm,
like
mm,
beautifying the city because
mm,
Pittsburgh also, I'm sure you know, it's like a former steel city and
mhm,
like
mhm,
post-industrial, and
mhm,
was one of the
mhm,
first cities to like try and reinvent itself.
mhm, mhm.
Um, so there are a lot of areas of town that where there was like economic disinvestment,
Mm,
and of course those are
mm,
black and brown neighborhoods.
absolutely.
So I spent a lot of time like physically planting trees in those, do
Mm,
you know what I mean?
mm,
And like trying to take
mm,
care of
mm.
the I don't know that I would have said it this way at the time, but when I think back on it, it's like
Totally.
this sort of like trying to take care of the place,
Yes,
you know?
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh my God, Annalisa, thank you for that. I have to ask you, how did you get involved in all these like extracurricular, or not even extracurricular because that's not what you said, but like these programs, like these educational programs at Pittsburgh? I mean, was it something that you went to your mom as like a 7-year-old or a 10-year-old and was like, "Mommy, I want to do this"? Or I mean, I'm always
Yeah.
curious about how we all get the exposure to the arts. Like, how did you even get involved in that kind of stuff? I don't want to assume
Yeah.
that I know the answer to that.
Well, in like elementary and middle school, I was very convinced that I was going to be a rock star and I'm like a singer. Christina Aguilera went to my high school, so and oh
Oh,
yeah, so, so like
that'll do it. That'll do
oh
it.
yeah, so I was like, obviously, I will follow in her footsteps.
I love
um,
that.
yeah, and so I was like, yes, I'm going to be a singer. This is what my
Mm,
dream is.
mm,
And I did actually convince my parents to like when I was in elementary, it was like late elementary into middle school and through high school, I was like outside of my school programs, I convinced my parents to put me in voice lessons.
mm,
Um, but my
mm,
mom, being my mom, was like, it will be opera.
mm.
So I like actually all through like being a kid, I was like taking these classical voice
Mm,
lessons and I was
mm.
like, this is how I'm gonna be a famous person.
Famous pop star. Yes.
Oh my God.
I love it. I love it though. I
So
love it.
ridiculous. And then I got to eighth grade and I had an English teacher who was like, have you ever thought about doing the Shakespeare monologue contest? And this
Mm,
this was like a city, I think
mm,
this maybe still exists at the Pittsburgh Public
mm,
Theater.
mm,
But this is a citywide contest that the
mm,
Pittsburgh
mhm,
Public Theater organizes every year. And
mhm,
it's students from all across the city will compete
mhm,
with a Shakespearean monologue of like
mhm,
a minute or two or less.
mhm,
Or I
mhm,
think they also do scenes.
mhm,
Um, and it's like a 5 minute. If you do a scene that's 5 minutes or less, and you can have like there's some parameters around it.
mhm, mhm,
Um, but that you like do several rounds of
mhm,
performing before
mhm,
judges and whatnot, and
mhm,
then it's like a whole like the winner there's like finalists and they invite all
mhm,
these people and you perform on the Pittsburgh Public Theater stage and
mhm,
it's like big honor.
mhm,
Um, and yeah, my eighth grade teacher was like, "Have you ever thought about like trying this
mhm,
acting thing?
mhm,
Shakespeare.
mhm,
You seem to like reading and
mhm,
like
mhm,
plays and whatever."
mhm, mhm,
So I tried it and like I think maybe they had some kind of like coaching, like a
mhm,
semester of like
mhm,
if you enter the competition, you got to like meet with somebody to
mhm,
like help
mhm, mhm,
you
mhm.
coach your monologue a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
and I just remember like competing in that and meeting all these other kids who were interested in theater and like acting and performing
Mm,
and all of
mm,
this. And I was like, oh, these are my people.
mhm, mhm,
um,
mm,
and I don't know if I could put a finger on what exactly it was about, like what signaled to me that like these are my
mhm,
people.
mhm,
Um, but I remember after participating in that once, I was like, oh, I think I'm gonna work in like I think this is my career
mhm.
path. Yeah,
Wow, that's
eighth grade.
amazing.
Yeah,
Eighth grade.
yeah.
Whew. Yeah, I mean that's why I like to ask those kind of questions because again, my experience was my freshman year in college, right? My first year in college.
Hmm.
Um, and so anyway, it's incredible to me when people figure that out earlier than that. I'm like,
Mm.
how did you figure it out? How did you know? I have two questions moving forward. One is, did you go to like a fancy performing arts high school? Because you
Oh
clearly had,
no,
had
no,
your
no.
moment. Okay. So no, you did not.
Yeah, I went to a
Um,
public high school.
a public high school. Okay, cool. Um, After even having had the moment of like these are my people, this is what I want to do in eighth grade,
Yeah,
you still went to like a public high school. And then
yeah.
my other question is, I'm curious, and this is taking us back just an inch, but I'm curious to hear you talk, Annalisa, about you had that middle school experience and you were like, oh, I'm not white.
Hmm.
How did that knowing, that newfound knowledge or whatever you would call it, show up for you in high school? Like, did it
Mm.
shift the way you interacted with people in any way or no? Or
I don't know that I really had like so much of an analysis
Mhm,
or
mhm,
um I think it's like it's always been a little bit weird for me
mhm,
because
mhm,
like I said, my dad is from Goa, which
mhm,
is like a very particular part of India that
mhm,
even like sometimes my Indian American friends are like, well, you're not really Indian because you're from
mhm,
Goa.
mhm,
And there's a whole thing in India that is
mhm,
like Goa is like a mostly Catholic state in India because of the Portuguese colonizers. And there's a whole thing in India about like religion as a thing that signifies who belongs and who doesn't. And like Hindu and Muslim, like like right now there's a rise in Hindu nationalism, but like Christians, I think, are especially thought of as like not really Indian in some way. It's very complicated over there, as it is here. You know, it is everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah.
But I remember, like, you know, I mentioned that I have this sort of like international family, and I have cousins in the Middle East and cousins in Brazil, and thinking back on it, that I think I always had this sort of like international awareness that people that I was growing up with just didn't
have. Ugh,
like had no concept of like anything else existing in the world outside of our high school.
Exactly.
And I was out there in high school organizing, like I was organizing in high school, and I was I remember I organized some, there was like some pledge that I wrote with some other collaborator friends of mine, and it was like simply pledge. I was like trying to get students to sign this pledge that was like, I promise to be aware that of like other shit that's happening in the world. And like at the time there was the genocide in Darfur was going on, and like all sorts of like horrific shit that I was like, how are we not talking about this stuff in our like why are we talking about like nonsense bullshit, and like there are people dying in the and like, you know, I was concerned about my cousins and what, and like my parents used to, I mean, this was a joke, but also I'm like kind of traumatic. But you know, like some families would be like, you have to finish your food because there are people starving in Africa, or like that bullshit. My parents were like, your cousins in India are starving.
Oh my God.
Like joking, but also it was like traumatizing as a child.
Exactly. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And it was like that kind of like stuff that I was just like always aware of, like global structures in a way that I think has informed the way that I conceive of myself now as an adult too. That it's like I never really fit in the Asian box. I never really, and like I got raced all the time as Latina, like people just assumed. And this was part of the like, oh, people look at me and they assume one thing, but that's like, even that is not like accurate. And like, what? And I have these like actual first cousins in the Middle East, and like first cousins in Brazil, and like my grandmother is in India. It was just like I didn't fit in any of the boxes. So even the way that we were talking about race or like multicultural, whatever the hell it was at the time, I just never felt like I quite fit in any of that. And like that is still like true today, which I think is what led me to doing the kind of work that I do that is around decolonization and like thinking about the global structure of colonial capitalism, and how like in so many ways the way that we talk about race in the United States, it's like insufficient, you know, like for everyone. I mean, race is a limiting, it's like meant to put people in boxes that are limiting and diminishing.
Absolutely.
And like, yeah, I think I've always like been really internally grappling with the ways that our language is insufficient to talk about who, like the fullness of who we are.
Hey God, hallelujah. Oh yes, Annalisa, thank you. So beautifully said. And thank you again for just going there. Thank you. I really, really appreciate that very much. And indulging me even. So talk to me about what happened for you after high school. Did you go to college? Did you not go to college? Did you stay in Pittsburgh? Did you leave it? What happened?
Oh God, I'm so sorry. This cat is like now trying to push, she's like on the desk, and hold on, give me 1 second.
Yeah, take your time.
Okay, we're good. I put her down, and then she like jumped back up on the actual desk and is like batting things around. So I'm just gonna hold her, and we're gonna
just hold her, see what happens.
You said, what did I do after high school?
Yeah.
I went to Boston University for 4 years.
Oh wow.
And I studied, well, like now it's easy to say I studied English and religion were my two double majors, and then I minored in theater and French. But like the journey of that 4 years, like at one point I was like, I'm gonna double major in English and physics, and like, and then at one point I was considering earth science, and it was just like I had no idea what I was doing. And yeah, so wild. But I ended up, by the end of my time at BU, I had degrees in English and religion. And then at the time, what I thought I wanted to do was a PhD in English, but like focusing on dramatic literature. And I like needed more time to figure out what programs and like apply and whatnot. So I ended up doing a year after undergrad in Los Angeles, and I was doing like an AmeriCorps program. And it was like a volunteer year basically, and I ended up being placed in a charter school in Los Angeles, well, in the Valley actually. And I was a special ed assistant, and I like at that school also started an after school theater program, and also started an after school, it was like before school or lunchtime, and we started the like green team where we were doing like waste audits and like thinking about the environment and all of this kind of stuff. And during that year I was applying to grad schools, and I still at the time thought I wanted to do a PhD in dramatic literature, but by that point I was like, oh well, if I'm going to do a PhD in English, I have to go to one of the top programs in the country, because I was like smart enough that I was like, the market is flooded with people who have PhDs in English, and who the hell wants to hire like no one can get jobs. So I better get a degree from Columbia or like Northwestern or Princeton or Yale, and like that's how I will guarantee myself income, because not having income was not an option. I was supposed to have gone to medical school. That was what my family wanted me to do. And like this whole theater thing was not chill.
Was not. Yeah, exactly. It was not it.
So I was like, maybe I'll be a doctor in this way, and I will make sure that I have an income by going to one of these top tier programs. So then I like reasoned with myself that I was like, maybe I think I need a freestanding master's degree so that I can get into one of these top programs. And so, long story less long, I applied to programs and got into the master's in theater history and criticism program at Catholic University in DC. And that was what brought me to DC. And during the program in DC, which was the sort of like equivalent of their dramaturgy program, even though they didn't call it that, they required as part of that program to do an internship at a local theater. So I did a dramaturgy internship at the Folger, and I kind of like looked around and I was like, wait, there are jobs in theater? Like what? I had no clue. I assumed that theater was for white people, and like at least the jobs, you know what I mean? And I kind of like looked at myself and I was like, what am I like? Prior to grad school, I had always assumed that like, what was I going to do as a performer? Like just be in the ensemble of West Side Story for the rest of my life. Because I was like, there's no roles for me. There's like actually none. So I did this dramaturgy internship, and then was like, you know, as these things happen, I met new people, and they were like, oh, do you want to come assistant direct this thing? And then I dramaturged another show, and it was just like, work begets work, that thing. Absolutely. So then I was like, oh, I guess maybe I want to be a director, and like maybe that's, and then I like took an adaptation class as part of that program, and I was like, maybe I'm a playwright now. But it was all sort of like, none of it was like a linear plan that I thought out and like then executed on. It was all kind of like, oh, I guess I could do that. Maybe I can do that. I don't know. And I think I surrounded myself with people who I would say are like values aligned and like were really supportive of me and my like interests and goals and like, you know, none of it was just me by myself. And then like fast forward through all of that sort of like networking and like jobs and whatever. I had got myself involved in TCG and was doing some like equity, diversity, and inclusion facilitation, but kind of with a lens of decolonization, and trying to point out that like maybe EDI is trash and like why do we even? Made a lot of people cry.
I bet.
And it was like through a TCG fall forum thing where I met Stephanie Ibarra, and then like fast forward, she got the job at Baltimore Center Stage, and she like called me and was like, "Do you want to come work with me?" And I was like, "Oh, what?" And then we made up a job, and then we made up a job based on like what my strengths and skill sets were, aligning with the kind of like artistic needs that she had at the institution. And here we are.
Oh my God, here we are. Annalisa, I just want to jump in and acknowledge / celebrate a couple of things. One, I'm so in awe of the fact that as a young person, even before college, you were already organizing. And thinking globally. And I just wanted to make sure that we didn't skip over that. I didn't skip over that, right? And acknowledge the fact that like, not only is that powerful and like so beyond to me that you're already thinking on those levels and thinking way past what I know I probably was thinking. Like you said, most of us were thinking about our high school, not even our city.
Totally.
So the fact that you were already doing that work and then also you talk about going around the city of Pittsburgh and taking care of these communities, even though you probably wouldn't have called it that then. That's what you were doing, right? Skipping to college, and then like I actually really love hearing you talk about the sort of freedom, if you might, in which you kind of move through undergrad. Just like, all right, maybe this. I mean, it may sound messy to some, but to me, it sounds like free, and I really, really love that. And same with your time and like looking for work after undergrad, going to grad school. Going to LA and then coming back and going to grad school in DC. I just love it all. So I just want to celebrate that journey, the journey of what I think of as freedom and movement and exploration, I think is the word that kept coming up for me as I was listening to you, and finding it. And then also like finding the people in the places that align, right? And I love that you talk about how you and Stephanie have come together. It just is beautiful. And I wonder, and this might be more of a Stephanie question, but I'd be curious to know what she saw in you at that conference, other than the fact that you making folks cry, which I love so much, that made her say, let me call this person in particular, right?
We have an inside joke. Like I think I can share. I mean, please, I'd be curious how she would, like what words she would use to describe this, but like the real is that we were it was like some fall forum event that was happening at the Public Theater where she was working at the time. And it was like maybe one of the opening events where there was like, it was like at Joe's Pub, and it was like the bar was open and there was some people networking or something like this was happening.
Something like that, yeah.
And we somehow like, I can't remember if somebody introduced us or if we just like found ourselves in the same place. And then we started grumbling about white people. It's like, what? We were like, look at this white shit that's happening or whatever it was. And like, I don't know. It's something about like, oh, this is a values aligned person.
Yes, exactly. I love that. That makes total sense. And that is sometimes how it happens, right? Usually how it happens is like, do you see this? Because I see this shit too.
Yes.
I love that so much. Please indulge me for 2 seconds, Annalisa. Because I went to school in Boston, I went to Emerson College for grad school.
No way.
Yes. And there was
what did you do in grad school?
I did theater education.
At Emerson.
At Emerson, yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and there was a summer where I subletted an apartment that was like right across the street from Boston University. So my question for you is, what was Boston like? Yeah, just like a few words about like what being in Boston was like for you, considering all the things that we've already talked about.
Yeah,
because Boston is a very particular place, as you know. And then I also want to know why you chose Boston University. Those are the 2 little tiny things that my brain won't let go of.
Yeah. Well, part of why I chose Boston University was I don't know if this is embarrassing or not, but I did the thing when I was in high school and like thinking about colleges where I literally drew a circle around Pittsburgh that like would necessitate a plane trip. And I was like, I have to go somewhere outside of this because I was like, what I will not have is my
Pulling up on me unexpected
on the weekends.
Exactly.
So
I love that.
So like that was some amount of it was like it must be at least as far away. And then this is a little bit of a random thing that people are always surprised by. In middle school and high school, I also played ice hockey. And I was like recruited by a couple, not Boston University, but a couple of different schools. And I like wanted to go to a school where like athletics and sports were like an option, like a thing that I could continue doing. And they had all sorts of like recreational fitness or whatever and like athletic programs that you could participate in. So like that was a piece of it. And then I mean, like, frankly, I got a half scholarship, so like the money was there, like the money was there.
The money was there, yeah.
And yeah, and I think Boston University also, it's like a huge, huge school.
Yes, it is.
And they, I mean, like, I'm talking, they have like 50,000 students. It's crazy.
Oh yes, it's massive.
And I think something in me as a high school student knew that I like didn't quite know what I wanted yet. And I knew that at Boston University there were enough different degree programs to explore or whatever. And I was like, oh, if I realize my sophomore year that I actually want to do earth science or whatever, I wouldn't have to like transfer to some other university. Like I could do whatever I wanted. So it was like all of those factors combined.
Annalisa, that's so good. And one thing I want to just carve out and celebrate one more time before we move forward is the thing that I'm tracking from listening to your journey is that it seems that you've always had an interest in a lot of things and your finger in a lot of things, like your toe in a lot of things. And I love that. And I want to just acknowledge the fact that like, whether you were conscious of it or not, there was something in you that knew what you just said. There was something in you, like you just said, that knew I need to go to a place where I have options. You know? And again, whether you could call it out or point to it is neither here nor there. But the fact that you knew that and trusted that and let that guide you, I think is so beautiful and not to be lost. This space that I'm trying to create with Celebrate is not just about interviewing. It's also about the divine sacred. And I think there's something very divine about what you're saying there. So thank you for letting me share that. And then you talk about where we are now, Baltimore Center Stage.
Yeah.
I remember when the announcement came out that Stephanie was going to be at Center Stage. And then I remember when it came out that you were going to join her. Yeah. And I thought, who is this person? I can't wait to like know more about them. And then of course, like I said earlier, I had this incredible experience with you last summer that I'm so grateful for, which is why I invited you here today. I guess the thing that I like to ask artistic leaders today, people who are running these institutions, is how can we as a community support you at this time, in this moment?
Oh my God. Oh, how do I answer that? Oh, wow. How do I, That's such an interesting question because like I feel a little bit like, I mean, when Stephanie and I first had that conversation when she was like, do you want to come work with me? I like literally said to her, and I'm for sure she'll confirm this, that I literally said to her, like, why would I want to work at a PWI? And like, what am I, those are bastions of white supremacy. Like, what am I going to do inside? Isn't that just going to be harmful? And like, what change can we actually make? And for why? And she was like, well, what if we can blow it up from the inside? I'm like, what if like have you tried? Like, have you tried to work out from the inside? And I was like, okay, no, fair. That's fair. Like I had always been a person who was like, a playwright and director and performer on like doing independent work and like railing about the like problems of institutions from the outside, which is its own role. Like that is also important.
Absolutely.
And so I had never like tried to work inside an institution, not in theater anyway. I worked in other white institutions, my day job. But it's interesting because I feel a little bit like I'm on the inside of this institution right now, and I have like whatever time I'm here, I want to activate whatever resources I can for like independent artists and like get it like unlock the resources, you know, like get it out to people. So it's like it's hard for me to think about like I feel like I need to support you and like how can I support artists who are not inside the institutions to like get the resources. So it's I don't even know how to answer. I don't know that I've thought about what support I need as a person for like from independent artists on the outside, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I feel you so hard. And I get that. And it's not something that you need to answer right now or ever if you don't want to. It's just it's something that I think a lot about as an independent artist who works inside very temporarily inside these institutions. And also the fact that like we are living in a time where more of us, you and I, are taking over these institutions are doing that work from the inside. It's really interesting, right? Because like you are in there thinking about me and like how you can get resources to me. And I want to be on the outside thinking about you and how I can get resources to you, right? And how I can love on you and energize you and take care of you, right? So that's where my brain is. And it's something, again, that I've been asking everybody who I come in contact with who are doing that leadership work, you know, and not even just that. I mean, my freelance director friends, I call them first day of rehearsal. What do you need? Is there a day during rehearsal I can bring you lunch? Right? Do you need me to come sit in a preview and like just like whatever or what do you need? Right. And I think as we think about taking care of each other, we have to take care of ourselves first. So thank you for that. Thank you for that. In the spirit of lightheartedness, if I'm so conscious of time, I could talk to you forever. You are so like, oh my God. In the spirit of lightheartedness and fun, just tell us a few things that are some of your favorites, things you really enjoy, like your favorite food, your favorite city. Just like help us get to know you a little bit better through your favorites.
Oh, okay. Favorites. What are my favorites? Okay, this is my favorite cat.
She is so cute, by the way.
I know she's so cute. Her name is Mushroom.
She's so cute.
She adopted me during the pandemic.
Yes.
Okay, this is a weird story. If I may go on a tangent from the favorites. So there was like a moment at the end of 2020 where I was like on the phone with a friend of mine and I was like, I think I'm experiencing depression. I don't like, is that what this is? I don't know. I don't know how to deal with my life anymore. And she was like, have you ever thought about getting a cat? And I was like, no, I can't take care of another. I can barely take care of myself. Like, how am I going to take care of another creature? And then I kid you not, like 3 days later, this cat, like rolled up to the front door of the apartment where I was living. And she was like, now I live here. And I like took her to the shelter because I was like, whose cat is it? Like, does this cat belong to someone? And they scanned her for a microchip. Didn't have one. So I talked to the shelter people and they were like, well, if you post on like Nextdoor and you post some flyers around the neighborhood to say like I found this cat and nobody claims it in 21 days, then legally in the state of Maryland, she belongs to you. So she adopted me.
I love that she adopted you.
Yeah.
I love that, Annalisa. And thank you so much for that story, that beautiful tangent, and for introducing the word depression into this space, which is so very welcome. And so very important. So thank you for that as well. I love that. Do you have a favorite food or favorite city or a favorite song?
Favorite city is hard. I feel like I really love LA actually. Like ever since I lived there, I've been like, how do I get back to living in LA? But then like, I don't know. I always, when I first moved to DC, I thought I would only live here live in DC for grad school. And then I was like, I'm going to go back to LA. But then for like all the reasons of community building and all kinds of things, like I ended up staying in DC, and then this job brought me to Baltimore, which is only 45 minutes away from, it's like, I don't feel like I really left DC.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, I don't know. Like I really enjoy Baltimore actually. It's like, it's got its own kind of vibe and it's super cheap to live here. like I bought a house.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that feels really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, how about favorite hobby right now is
Sure,
like
yeah.
playing in my garden.
Mm,
This was part like I wanted to buy a house during this pandemic nonsense
mm,
because I was previously living in a third floor walk-up
mm,
apartment. And I just was like the amount of energy it was taking me to like get myself down the stairs to like go run around, like to walk out, to take a walk
mm,
even. It
mm.
just was like, I could just stay here on my couch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
But
Absolutely.
now I have this house and I have a yard and
Mm-hmm.
it's like not a third floor. It's like a
Mm-hmm.
house, so I can just go
Mm-hmm.
outside. It's like it's
Mm-hmm.
just that mental
Yes,
space
yes,
is
yes,
so
yes.
huge. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I like to wrapping up. I'm so full, Annalisa, and I'm having so many thoughts. I just want to. I would be remiss if I didn't say shout out to Stephanie
Yeah.
Ibarra, who noticed all of what you bring and said, let's create something that
Yeah.
aligns with all that you bring. And I just want to say that before I forget.
Yeah.
The way I like to wrap these conversations up is by asking 3 questions. The first one is, what does it mean to you to be celebrated?
Oh, these are not simple questions, LA.
I'm so sorry. I'm
What does
realizing.
it mean to be celebrated? I'm like sitting with the feeling of being seen right now,
Mm-hmm.
like full
Mm-hmm.
stop. Like that
Mm-hmm.
feels like its own
Mm-hmm.
kind of celebration of just
Mm-hmm.
like,
Mm-hmm.
see, now I'm gonna get emotional.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's
But like
welcome.
that feels I think rare to feel
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
seen inside of this work, but then
Mm-hmm.
also like, you're asking me about like how does it all kind of tie together with the story of who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And that I think is really rare. Like, and
Mm-hmm.
especially now inside of this pandemic where it's like, well, I don't know what everyone else's experience has been like, but I would say that like I know that there is a certain amount of people who like got furloughed or left jobs or whatever and like were reevaluating their lives in that way. My experience over the last 3 years has just been a pressure cooker where like we've
Mm-hmm.
never stopped at
Mm-hmm.
Baltimore Center Stage.
Mm-hmm.
We've been
Mm-hmm.
producing since
Mm-hmm.
2019, like, and
Mm-hmm.
it's been back to back to back
Mm-hmm.
to back, and like
Mm-hmm.
the stakes have always felt high because it's like
Mm-hmm.
we have to do the work in order to justify the funding to keep people
Mm-hmm.
employed, and like
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
it has it's I think it's been rare in the last like specifically 3 years to feel like someone can see and
Mm-hmm.
appreciate the
Mm-hmm.
like what that is, like what that
Mm-hmm.
journey is. So thank
Mm-hmm.
you for that.
You are very welcome, sister. I mean, like, listen, I will never be able to share enough with you today how much our interaction, brief interaction, and the introduction that you made has helped me so much. And the fact that you are doing that anyway, I can go on and on and on. You are very welcome. So I totally see you.
Well,
And I recognize what the work that you're doing. The second question is, what or who do you celebrate?
who do I celebrate? Who do I celebrate? Wow. See, I'm like emotional, LA.
I love it, Annalisa. I mean, I am too. I am. I will honestly say that I feel tears coming down my nose, and like I feel it. It's all rising. My sinuses are starting to get.
um, my family is going through some like stuff right now,
Mm-hmm.
which I won't get into, but like it's
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, I feel like I need to celebrate my family a little bit right now, and like
Mm-hmm.
that has the stuff that we are going through is like health related stuff, and I'm really grateful for the way that like my sister and I mentioned earlier have like become closer, and like even some of my cousins who like I don't really talk to on a day-to-day basis, but even like they've reached out to be like, are y'all okay? Like, do you all need anything? It's like the way that the family is kind of coming together right now. It feels not like a given, and that feels really great. um Yeah. And I would say Stephanie too. Like Stephanie is also like dealing with her own shit right now that is like a lot of not. Oh, and I should also celebrate Jacob Padron and Kit over at Long Wharf, because there's some white backlash that is happening. I don't know if you're aware of this. Oh my
Oh,
God.
child. Oh, God. Oh,
Oh
God.
yeah, it's
Okay.
bad. It's bad. And I just need to say out loud that they're amazing leaders, and like got handed a dumpster fire, like an almost literal dumpster fire at Long Wharf, and are doing amazing things with that organization. And like the white backlash that is happening is, it's like stunning, and also same shit different. Like I'm like surprised, but I'm not surprised.
Exactly,
you know?
exactly. Ooh, shout out to Jacob and Kate and
And Kate,
amazing
yeah,
leaders.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, Jacob is stunning, as you said. Yeah. And the final question I like to ask you, thank you for that, Annalisa. Thank you for that. What do you do to celebrate you?
What do I do to celebrate me? I mean, I said this a little bit already, but I just installed raised beds in my garden outside, and I'm like, um, I'm very excited to like A of all have a garden, but then B of all, like I planted, um, yes, the garden. We're back to the garden.
Yes.
I like planted, I planted seedlings for kale and Swiss chard and corn and like all kinds of vegetables and herbs and all sorts of things. And I'm like excited for this summer to like be nourished by that.
Yay!
And
Yes.
like,
Yes.
I don't know. I'm just like in the face of, all these crazy articles where people are like, we're predicting a global food shortage because of the war in Ukraine and like recession and all sorts of like catastrophe. And I'm just like, well, I'll have food in my garden that I can share with people maybe. And like, that will be, like, maybe that will be something to celebrate,
Annalisa, I knew from meeting you last summer that you were a beautiful soul, and that there was something very special about you. And listening to you say what you just said about the garden, and maybe I can feed other people, it's stunning, my friend. It's stunning. Aww. And it confirms everything that I thought I felt, and I felt like I felt. And it also confirms everything that you shared today. I'm so glad you exist, sister. I love you. I'm grateful.
LA.
I'm so happy to be on this journey with you, Annalisa. Like,
hey, same, right back at you. Also, you're gonna move to Baltimore. Let me just throw that.
I mean, child, listen, we are
on the journey.
On the journey. I definitely need something other than just New York. Okay.
Yep.
So that is absolutely a possibility. But yeah, I just thank you for everything you're doing at Center Stage. It would not be what it is without you over there. I know that. I can feel that, and that was evidenced when I met you last summer. Thank you so much, Annalisa. We love you. We've got your back, sister. Like,
thank you.
We're here for you, and we celebrate you. And thank you for doing this.
Thank you, LA. This is such a lovely conversation. I'm so glad you invited me.
Yeah, me too. I'm so glad you said yes, and I hope you feel great about everything. I mean, I love that you were like, "Where am I? What are we doing?" I love it. But thank you so much for your openness and just talking through your really beautiful journey. And much love on the continuation of it.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. See you soon.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.